Another staple ingredient in early indigenous cuisine is going to be corn. All right, in a lot of different forms. Today we're going to be using a very coarse cornmeal or a polenta, which we'll talk about why polenta would be a weird thing to call it at this point. Um, but we're going to be using that to make corn cakes, which are very simple. Right, you need water, salt, all right, um, cornmeal, all right, and then something to fry it in. So whether you're using an animal fat like a lard or a tallow or something like that. Well, we're going to be using sunflower oil. You can also use avocado oil. If you don't have any of that, vegetable oil would be fine. Canola. You could even do it a little bit of olive oil, which would be not traditional, but you can use what you have around. Now a note about our polenta. So this polenta comes from Calistoga, the bale grist mill polenta. All right, so this is a stone ground. You want something coarse here. You don't want a fine ground cornmeal. If you do use that, you're not going to get quite the right texture. They're probably going to want to fall apart a lot. So this is actually very similar. If you've ever had an Italian polenta that has been, they cook it, they let it set and cool, and then you can cut it and then you can fry it. We're going to do something kind of similar, but we're going to form it into patties. So this is going to be a little more like a creamy kind of texture. But we're going to let it cool because there's still a lot of starch in corn. Right? We're going to cook that starch, right? And it's going to bind together so it sticks. If you undercook this, they're going to fall apart. So what we have here is 3 cups of water, just standard water, right? And bring it to a boil. And then you want to salt that water. Kind of thinking like salting the water like for pasta. And, you want to aggressively do this. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to taste much of the corn later on. So we're talking about 3 cups, at least 2 teaspoons of salt. You can always salt them later, all right, if they're a little bit under. And as it's cooking, you can always add a little bit more. So always have some salt ready. But you can easily 2 teaspoons to get it started. Put our polenta over here. All right, we have 1 cup of polenta. Once we are at a boil here, we can add that polenta. You'll need a whisk. Now this is going to take about 30 minutes. So once we're at a boil and we add this, you're going to turn your heat down to really low and just stir it occasionally, making sure it doesn't burn on the bottom. So this is going to go in, kind of whisk as you're adding it. And what you're going to see happen as time progresses here, it's going to slowly get creamier and thicker and thicker. Right, so at this point, reduce your heat, right, almost as low as it can go. Right, if you're using an electric stovetop, crank it all the way down. Right, if you're using gas, just a low flame on there is really all you want. Make sure the flame, of course, stays on. Right, and just by whisking this for 30 seconds, I can feel it already kind of resisting and thickening. But we want this a nice thick mash by the time it's done. So keep stirring, and we'll come back to this in about 20 minutes. We'll take a look at it, see if it needs more time. It all depends. If you're using more of a coarse cornmeal, it's going to cook a little bit faster. If you're using a really coarse like a polenta, it's going to take a little bit longer. So we'll see kind of what the bale grist mill has in store for us, and we'll come back to this soon. So our cornmeal here, or our polenta, if you will, is looking really good. It should be really clumpy. Kill our heat. This sat on here for about 25 minutes for this one. But really what we're going for is texture, right? It should be thick, but make sure on the bottom of your pot, right, it should still be clean, right? A little bit of a white film is okay, but you don't want it burnt. If it's burnt, you weren't stirring enough. So do that one last good mix, and this is a good time to taste it. So grab a tasting spoon, don't use your fingers, because we can adjust seasoning now. It's more difficult once the starches are really set. I'm going to go in with just a little bit more salt. Now if you wanted to make this more of like an Italian dish, or if you really just wanted to change it up a bit, this is when I might grate in some pecorino or some Parmesan cheese. All right, taste again. Remember, the spoon has 2 sides. Taste with the other side. If you're cooking at home, of course, you could use the same or twice. Much better. Get all of that off of your whisk. Make sure to rinse that right away, otherwise it's going to be a real pain to clean. We're going to scrape that onto just a small pan. You can put it in a bowl. The more surface area it has, it's going to cool a lot faster. So we'll scrape this out. Make sure you get it all out of there. And then just gonna spread it all on here. So we're just gonna spread this around. All right. Like so. And then just let it cool, all right? It can cool at room temperature until it fully sets. If you do want it to cool faster, you could put this in a fridge. Downside of doing that is it's going to reduce the temperature of your fridge. So I would advise against it. At least let it sit out for 15 minutes before you kind of rapidly cool it in the fridge. Best practices with food safety. If you're really worried about a film or anything, you could put a piece of plastic on top. But we're gonna form these into cakes once this is cool and set. Don't rush it, all right? Otherwise your cakes will fall apart when we try to fry them. And that's what we'll have next. So now that our corn cakes here have set, you can see it kind of, it makes a sheet. Now the easiest way to do this, if you have cutters, use them, all right? You can also, take a teacup and cut around it. All right, worst case, what you can do is you can kind of mix this up, mash it all back up, and then reform it. But this is kind of the easiest way to do it. I'll show you both. So again, we have a cutter, kind of size whatever you want. This is about a 2.5 to 3 inch cutter. So what you can do is just punch out a couple, punch, and then twist. Again, easiest way to do it. And then with all the scrap, what you can do is mash that back up. This is really going to keep it because the starch has already kind of glued it all together. It gives more of kind of a modern presentation as well. All right, what I'm doing right over here is I'm just heating up a little bit of oil. Again, you can use canola, more traditional. You're using what would be here indigenously, you use sunflower oil, but again, you can use canola, you can use olive oil, you can use avocado oil. We're just kind of using it as a buffer to fry. I'm using a cast iron, but you can use really any pan. Just make sure you heat up the oil first. Once you see it glisten a little bit, that's what we're looking for. And then we're just going to get some nice color on it, both sides. All right, a non-stick pan would also be pretty good. I've got about a 1mm layer in the bottom. So really, it's not so much the volume that you need with a measurement, but it depends on the size of your pan, right? So this is a 10-inch cast iron pan, well seasoned. So again, just a 1mm on the bottom. What you can always do is a quick little test. Take a small piece, pop it in there. Once it's sizzling, and it is, we are good to go. We're just going to gently pick up our little cakes. Get that frying off. And again, it's already cooked, so it's edible right as is. But getting some nice color on both sides, that was what we're looking for. Reduce our heat just a little. Now what you can do with all this scrap is you can take this and kind of work it into a ball shape here. Press it down. This would be the more rustic way of doing this. It will still kind of stick together and it's kind of gelatinous. So that can be done as well. I'll just cook off a couple of these. Get all that starch off my hand. And again, just some light color is really all you want. And then we're going to serve these right underneath our turkey with our vegetables and our cranberry sauce and all nice kind of together dish. So take a look. Not quite developing enough color yet. You don't want to flip them too fast. About 2 minutes each side. As long as you have nice hot oil, they will brown up nice. They have a little bit of crunch on the outside. And again, if you added some cheese, less traditional, but you could, right? That kind of adds some moisture, extra flavor in there. So there are ways to modify it. If you think it's a little bland as is, you can get a little creative with it. The starch will still bind together. Let's give this a flip. Right, starting to get a nice golden color on there. Perfect. Give that one a little bit more time. First little guy that we put in there is most definitely done. Let's see if we can get it out. But the key is don't overcook it. It's already cooked. This is a cooked polenta. So if you've ever had polenta, like a polenta steak that's been grilled or anything, that's exactly what we're really dealing with here. Again, just a nice crust. That's what we're looking for. You can kind of see the difference here. Right, this one's a little more rustic, right? Because we smashed it with our hands. But it's nice when you can do it, cut a little more precise, right? Sherman's book, The Sous Chef, is all about, modernizing, but using traditional, techniques and traditional flavors, traditional ingredients. So that's really what we're hoping to achieve here. Another couple seconds, and that's what we have. And we're going to prepare this. We're going to shingle them out. Have everything ready. I would have these like last minute as your turkey's coming out of the oven. All right, fry these up real quick. They're nice to also pop in the freezer. Let them defrost 15 minutes before you fry them up. They'll finish defrosting in the center. Be nice and soft, but nice and crispy on the outside. All right, I'm going to kill our heat because my oil is plenty hot enough. Take these out. We have our nice little corn cakes. Delicious. All right, so you guys can see, so we have a nice golden on the outside, it's still nice and creamy on the inside. That's what we're looking for here. All right, delicious, delicious.